Okay, great. Yeah, so let me go ahead and share that again. Got share sound, WARBL. Okay, great. Google Chrome. Okay, yeah. So I use. So anyway, welcome everybody. This is kind of ask me anything about the new WARBL WebMIDI tools, including Celtic Sounds and WARBL Sound Lab. Just kind of going through some demos here and talking about the WARBL configuration tool and how I set up my WARBL. I've always played my WARBL as a whistle. I probably use 10% of what it's capable of doing. I know it can be very expressive. I know you can do a lot of things with breath pressure, and now on the Bluetooth one, you can wave it around and all kinds of stuff. But I was just primarily interested in using it as a whistle replacement. And I don't use the sliding. I don't use the half-holing yet, although that's a new feature, I guess, on this guy. I just use it with finger vibrato because I just want something that just sounds like a whistle. I want to be able to do this. I'm going to turn off the MIDI messages. That's all I want out of my WARBL. So that's the beauty of WARBL, is you can set up your configurations, any way you want. And I posted the configuration I use in the Facebook group. So you can load it just from the WARBL configuration and then just import preset and then point it at that file that I put up on the Facebook group, and you can have the exact same settings I have. I've configured it to work to feel very much like my Copeland whistle. So if I'm using overblow to get the octaves, and if you look in the advanced here, these breath settings are a little different than the defaults that Andrew puts in the WARBL. They're a little bit, I don't even know how to describe it. They're a little bit more responsive, and to me it feels exactly like I'm playing my Copeland. So if you want, you can grab that one, or at a minimum you can take a look at it and not necessarily save it in your WARBL, but take a look at these breath settings. I find that these make a huge difference. I'm using just finger vibrato. I'm using the default tin whistle setting with just vibrato, and I don't use any of these. I don't use any of these things except like I've got the Jones control on for the inland pipes, and I've set up my switches so that I can turn the drones on and off. I should probably zoom this up a little bit. Can I? Here we go. So I set up my buttons so that I can turn the drones on and off with button 1. I have octave up and down shifts on the other 2 buttons, and then I just have a long press on 3 to turn it off. So again, if you grab this preset from the Facebook group files area, you can use it. Again, you don't even have to, you can just load it. You don't have to even, you can check it out, because when you change something in the panel, it will change it immediately on the WARBL, but it doesn't store it to the permanent memory on the WARBL unless you actually click Save Settings for Current Instrument. So, and then I use a default bend range of 2. And anyway, so definitely this is how I always recommend people who are first starting out with WARBL, particularly whistle players, work with it, because the WARBL is an incredibly deep controller in terms of what's possible. And Jesse sent along that really crazy patch that does expression, and he can wave stuff around and all that. I don't use it like that, and partially because to me the breath pressure thing is great if for expression, except it sort of defeats the ability to do the octave switches the way I want to do them. I really want to be able to play this thing like a whistle, so I want to be able to go. Okay, the fact that it can do that blows my mind, to be honest. I mean, just that this thing is just so smart, and the ability to set those thresholds in this panel here allow you to do that kind of thing. You can go through, if you haven't used the WARBL configuration tool, it can be a little bit overwhelming at first, but the nice thing is he's got help on every single one of these items. It explains exactly what's going on. Because if you think about what it takes to make a tube, feel like an instrument, you know, there's like how hard you have to start to get it to play. How does it sort of respond? Does it do it linearly as you blow harder? When you want to push it in the second octave, how hard do you have to push it to keep it there, to get it there? And then how long do you have to keep it at that pressure? If you accidentally drop your pressure a little bit, you don't want it to drop right away. And that's what all these hysteresis and jump time and drop time are. It's like, what does it take to get it there? How is it going to tend to stay there and then come back down? So anyway, definitely worth looking into. I've only explored a little bit about using the bag. I know some people. I have the bag. I can hook it to this. I just don't use it that way. I use it exclusively as a whistle. I set my system up to have one preset that's the whistle preset, and then I have another one that's just, and again, this is not my stuff. This is just the WARBL configuration tool. And then I set up a second one that's essentially identical, except that it has the Highland pipes, the default Highland pipe setting. And the reason I do that is because the WARBL in the default Highland pipe setting puts out essentially different notes. It actually puts out a B flat for when you cover, when you play it like would be a D on the whistle, it puts out a B flat. And so you have to, so the instruments that I've built for the Scottish instrument fingerings they match this exactly. So you don't have to do anything, you have to worry about transposes or anything. Like if you just want to, you know, so like here it's in tin whistle fingering, and then you play the tin whistle. And then if you wanted to play the Highland pipes, you can just switch. This is just switch. The only difference here is that it's switched this fingering pattern from tin whistle flute to GHB. And now if I switch to like Great Highland bagpipe here, and then the drone switch here will switch the drones on. Oop. So, turn it back off. Keep hitting the wrong button. Yeah, so that's how I set mine up. I set mine up with just these two instruments, and I have a button set up in the buttons to switch between them, but I don't do it that way. I typically just leave this up when I want to play around with configurations. But 99% of the time, I'm just using it as a tin whistle. So the tin whistle fingerings work for the tin whistle, Irish flute, uilleann pipes, Anglo concertina, and accordion instruments. So I should make my system a little bit louder so you can hear it better. Here we go. Now I have my pitch bend range here matching the WARBL configuration of two semitones. I have these options. These generally should match. This pitch bend range is, there are a few settings in Celtic Sounds and also in WARBL Sound Lab that are global for the whole thing. So for example, the expression source, the input channel, and the pitch bend range are not instrument specific, but all of these other settings are. So for example, if I change the pitch bend downscaling on the Irish flute here to some crazy number like that, you know, some like there's pi, okay? And then I change to like whistle, you'll see that it will change to the value for the whistle. If I change back to flute, it'll change to that. And then I can always reset it to the default. This will just set the Irish flute back to the default. So just to know that a few of these things like the pitch bend, the MIDI input channel, and this is all in the documentation, which is available right there. Tells you everything you could possibly want to know about this thing. But it's kind of fun to play around with the pitch bend scaling if you don't want to actually mess with the semitones. Like this just, this allows you to, you know, if you want to get rid of the pitch bend or make it excessive, it kind of gives you another dial besides the pitch bend semitones, and it allows for independent scaling of if you have the possibility of setting upward pitch bend, it'll do that as well. You can scale that. You have some control over the attack, like this is set to be pretty quick. If you want a long tail on it for some reason, so you have some control over the attack and release times. Here's what I really think is cool, and the transpose is really nice because, so I'm in a D whistle. Oh, sorry, let me go back to the whistle. I should be using whistle for this. But if I wanted to play in a B flat whistle, I can just transpose this down 4. So you can play around with transpose. You want a low D whistle. Okay, so that's kind of handy. I really like that you can do that. The only other thing in here would be the reverbs. So you have a bunch of reverbs. These are the same reverbs that are in the ABC transcription tools. So if you want a big church sound, you can just take it to church. Bring the reverb wet up. Okay. So you have a bunch of reverb settings here, and if you're familiar with Celtic Sound, I'm sorry, with the ABC transcription tools, you can get it uses the exact same sounds. And let's see, I should talk a little bit about the uilleann pipes. So you've got the tin whistle, flute, uilleann pipes, concertina. The uilleann pipes have the drone feature, so I'll turn the drones on. I'm using the back button I've set up on, you can see right here in the WARBL configuration. Drones on off right there on click 1. And let me turn them off for a second. I'm going to just make this, so we'll do this as a set of pipes in B, and we'll set the to Hall 3. We'll make it a little bit wetter, and we'll start the drones. Right? So you can have a lot of fun doing flat set of pipes that way with it.
Michael, I'm sorry if I missed this. It took me a while to figure out how to get into this Zoom meeting.
Yeah,
Um, but I noticed that under MIDI input it says Bluetooth,
yeah.
and I don't see a wire. Is that like a WARBL 3 is
Oh,
Bluetooth?
so WARBL 2. WARBL 2 is Bluetooth.
Oh, okay. But it
Yeah,
comes with
WARBL
a
2.
wire.
It comes with a wire because it will also plug in on, there's a USB-C port on the back that's used for charging, and if it's plugged in, it'll act like a USB WARBL. Um, so yeah, it works both. It's a dual mode controller.
Oh, okay.
You charge it up on USB-C, and it lasts for many hours between charges.
Oh, great.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, but everything works essentially the same between the WARBL and the original WARBL and the WARBL 2, except the WARBL 2 has accelerometer built into it, so you can shake it around and it keeps track where it is in space, and so people can do some pretty exotic things. Not a whole lot you can do with that in the stuff I'm doing, but probably in some much more sophisticated synthesizers that would be possible. Let's see, what else did I do here? Let me just go back to the whistle real quick here, and yeah, we just have tuning. particularly handy if you're I'm going to switch to the like if you're Highland pipes often.
Can you change this from even temperament or just intonation?
No, no, it doesn't do just intonation, except for the bagpipes are all in just intonation. So all of the pipes, the inland pipes, the GHB, the small pipes, and I'm going to be adding another one. They're all in just intonation by default. But no, there's no way to do like the flute, whistle, concertina, accordion with just intonation. That's not possible. Um, so yeah, the tin whistle is an equal temperament. Um, oh, that's right, because I'm in Highland. I just wanted to show you, like, for the Highland pipes, I'll just turn the drones on. And modern bagpipe bands are not at A440. I mean, their B flat is like 480 or something, and so they often want it. They're up here, you know. Yeah. So that's kind of a nice thing to have for people who are I don't know if they want to use this to play along with pipe band recordings or something like that. They can tune the Highland pipes or any of them actually to the recording, and so that's certainly something one could do is to have play a recording from iTunes or something and then play along using this sort of thing. Let's see. Yeah, you can save. You got a bunch of settings you want. You can save them right here and then load them back later. So that saves all the settings for all the instruments, or you can just import them back by clicking Import Settings. I think if you have a stuck note, you can just click All Notes Off. That turns that off. Let me go back to whistle configuration here.
What
So,
was that you just said?
oh,
Clicking what?
I say if you ever get like a stuck note, like something happens and the thing just is like hung playing a note, you can just click All Notes Off, and
Oh,
it'll just immediately cut the notes off, like because sometimes if there's a glitch or something in the MIDI stream and it doesn't receive like a pitch, like a note
Sorry,
off.
what was that you just did? Because that happened to me yesterday and everything
No,
went to.
click the note. All notes off turns all the sound off. It
Oh,
just stops
perfect. Okay,
everything.
good. Thank you.
Yeah,
Because I
yeah,
was lost trying to figure out how to stop that drone.
yeah.
I hit the drone
Well, the
button on the
drone, well,
back.
the drone button on the back, you just hit it again.
I tried that and it wouldn't work. It wouldn't turn it off. Nothing would turn it off. I eventually had to unplug the whole system and then put it back
Oh,
in
that's
again.
weird.
So,
That's weird. Well, anyway, all
okay.
notes off will definitely turn off anything that's going. Yeah, so if you have the drone on, I'll just turn it on. No, it's off. I just clicked all notes off. So that's just there. Every MIDI tool always needs to have an all notes off button. Let's see. The other thing is would be the help again is right there, and at the bottom there's information on the other tools that I have, like the WARBL Sound Lab and any others that I might do in the future. You can take them right there. There's tip jar information at the bottom if you're interested, and there's some troubleshooting stuff. Again, the tools all run in using this system called WebMIDI, which is built into modern browsers, but not all browsers implement it equally. Chrome and all of the Chrome variants like Edge and there are a few others, they all work beautifully with WebMIDI. Safari and iOS Safari, there's nothing on iOS that does this. So it doesn't work on mobile. I don't know if it works on Android browsers. I haven't heard yet from anybody with Android, but generally mobile browsers haven't implemented WebMIDI. Firefox is a mixed bag. They only added WebMIDI to Firefox like in the last year, and it just seems like from version to version it works and then it doesn't work. And this is just from Andrew saying he gets reports that like it was working and then they changed something and then it's not working. So if you're like if you have to use Firefox, it probably will work. And I mean, I've had it work, but I just put some caveats in. Even when you launch the thing first time on Firefox, I put up a thing saying, by the way, you may want to consider using Chrome if you have any trouble, because I was just worried about people, using Firefox and then telling me, oh, it's not working. But I'm like, I warned you. The other thing that is probably a good idea, and I'm finding that it's maybe not as important as I thought originally, particularly with Celtic Sounds, because Celtic Sounds is, even though it's doing all these acoustic sounds, is not as complicated as the WARBL Sound Lab, because the WARBL Sound Lab is actually generating the notes real time in software. This is just playing back a bunch of note samples that I've recorded of all my instruments. So it's actually pretty simple. And so it can be like one of the things that browsers do is if I change to another tab. So if I launch Facebook in another tab here, what browsers do is they will start to deprioritize the performance of other tabs. So so for example, like the tabs that aren't visible won't get how can I describe it? They don't get the CPU priority. They don't get the kind of scheduling that needs to happen to be able to do like real-time music. And so the things that I'm doing, in Celtic Sounds really don't rely on anything that gets throttled. So in theory, I should just be able to play. Let me get out of Highland Pipes here and back to my comfy whistle settings here. Okay, so if I change to another tab, it should still run. But the actual behavior when it's in the back tab like that is completely unpredictable. We don't really know, Chrome may make some decisions like, oh, you haven't actually been on that tab for 5 minutes, we're going to like turn it off, So I generally tell, the good idea is keep it visible. And even better, if you want to make sure that it's working, you can just bring it into its own window. So have a separate window. As long as any part of that window is visible, there's two things. One is there are tabs. You can have multiple tabs, and one can be the active tab, and then you can have other tabs, and that one goes deactive. But there's also this idea of like, if you can't see it, then sometimes browsers will consider that to be a deactivated tab. So they have this concept of occlusion, and so if that goes completely behind another window and you don't see any part of it, they may start treating it like it's a deactive tab. So generally and again, this is not specific to what I'm doing. This is just a general thing with browsers and WebMIDI. Is like, it's probably a good idea to, when you're using it, keep it up front. If you hear any issues or something, like generally bringing it to front will solve them. I'm not saying that there is a problem, but I just kind of wanted to put that as a caveat out there. And I do talk about it quite extensively in the user guide here about keep this tab or window visible while playing. And again, it's not a 100% requirement, but it's probably a good idea. The last thing with Celtic Sounds is I added this. Hopefully you can see this. I don't know what happens with full screen things. I added this just, I think, a couple of days ago, which is you can go to a full screen mode, which is pretty cool. So you can have it like, if you want, you can zoom that in if you want to have like a great big Celtic Sounds. Can you see that full screen? I wasn't sure if that would actually show up. That's cool. Yeah, you can hit escape, take you back out, or you can just hit the zoom button there again. So I just added that yesterday and been improving it so that when it goes full screen, it's nicely kind of centered on
Another
the screen.
question.
Yeah.
So the original WARBL, you could use on an iPad.
Oh yeah, and you can use this on iPad as well with Celtic Sounds or any app that. So the situation's a little different on iPad. Again, WebMIDI. This is browser based. Is not supported by Safari, either on desktop or on iOS. So the apps that use MIDI on iOS, so on iPads or iPhones, are all native applications, like my Celtic Sounds or any of the apps that I developed there. Those are native applications. They're written in Swift or Objective-C. They're submitted to Apple for review. Blah blah blah. and they work with this. There's a system on iOS called Core MIDI, which allows uh, uh, different applications to all share the MIDI stream. And this is not really going to be a talk about how to use MIDI devices on iOS because that's a whole different kettle of fish. But basically, yeah, you can use a USB WARBL or a Bluetooth WARBL on an iPad, but it's a little bit how can I describe it? The USB one is pretty simple to use because you plug it in and it shows up. The Bluetooth one, you have to get it connected. And to connect it, some software will have the ability to knows about Bluetooth MIDI and is able to deal with it. But there's another app that I use on. There's actually two apps on iOS. There's one called MIDI Wrench, which is just kind of a MIDI manager and monitor that lets you like look at. It's essentially gives you the same data stream that I have over here. So you can actually see that you got data coming in, what channel it's on if you're having trouble. But it also is able to get you connected to Bluetooth MIDI devices. And so I use that for like to connect my WARBL initially if I'm doing something on iOS. There's another one from Core called something like Bluetooth BLE or something like that. But again, none of the browser solutions are going to work on iOS. So that would probably be a topic for another day. But yeah, no, the WARBL does work. I started out because I actually helped work on the original firmware, the framing charts and all that for the original WARBL USB, which are now in the new one. Yeah, I was testing it, and we actually built a couple of apps. Well, Celtic Sounds is one of them, but like getting the WARBL control panel to work on iOS was also an interesting problem. We had to do a dedicated app just for that, which is free, by the way, on the App Store if you want it. Just called like WARBL Configuration Tool. Any questions on Celtic Sounds? That's about all there is to it. I'm going to be adding I'll just give you a preview because of something that I'm working on literally right now.
I'm just curious, but
Yeah.
what would be the difference between using a tin whistle, you played it as a low whistle versus the flute?
Well, they just sound different. So here, I'll just connect. This is a version I'm pushing probably in a few hours. So like here's the tin whistle sound.
Yeah, when you transposed it down 12 tones.
Yeah, so let me play. Here's the flute. Okay, that's the flute, and then here's the whistle transposed down 12. Transposed down 12. So it's a different sound. It sounds more like Overton or something, low whistle, and there's less air in the whistle sound, because these are actually recording. I mean, I recorded. My tin whistle samples are actually like recordings of my Copeland, and my Irish flute sounds are recordings every note, and they're individual notes of every note on my my 1857 Metzler flute. So they're just different.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're just different, and
I
it's nice.
play both also, and I have a Copeland Low D.
Yeah,
They sound different, and it's kind of like nice to have two different sounds
yeah,
repertoire.
yeah, yeah. It's great. Yeah, I have a Copeland. You can see it back behind me there. Yeah, I have a Copeland D. I love that whistle. That is the closest thing to a flute that you can get, I think, in a whistle. This is a fantastic instrument. Any other questions about Celtic Sounds? And then I'll show you the WARBL Sound Lab stuff. Nope. Okay, great. So the other one that I put together is so Celtic Sounds was meant to be a web-based version of what I did on iOS, and uses the exact same samples as the iOS app. But then I thought, well, I wonder what would be possible to do if you did a synthesizer, an actual like synthesizer. And originally I was trying to do like I don't know if this kind of dates me, but I wanted to do a Yamaha DX7 emulation. So the actual DX7 synthesizer, the FM synthesizer from the like 80s, 70s even, I guess. And that turned out to be it turned out to be just too hard to use because there's just too many parameters. And so the idea was, I thought, well, maybe I would pick like 5 or 6 wind-friendly sounds and come up with something that was a little bit more constrained. So for that, I came up with this thing that I call WARBL Sound Lab, and here it's asking me if I want to give myself a tip. So let me tell you about the tip reminders. Again, this stuff's all free, but I am retired, so I appreciate anything people can send me. I'll bug you once at 10, and then every 50 after that. That's it. That's all I do. And of course, if you ever want to look for the tip jars, they are available in the bottom of the instructions. But I have no expectations, or don't feel obligated. But anyway, so this is WARBL Sound Lab. This is a synthesis-based wind synthesizer instead of samples. So the other one is actual, like I've recorded, they're little recordings. They're actually literally MP3 recordings of each note on the instrument. These are generated on the fly in the JavaScript code. These are actually synthesized. And there's these 6 instruments, and they're all just slightly different characters. So I'm going to just go ahead and connect the WARBL. And let's see, I'll leave everything on. So yeah, I'll just give you a sample of each of them. So there's air. These names were kind of arbitrary. Kind of a sine wave sounding thing. You can, I'll go into some of these settings and I'll just give you a general sense of the character of them. Reed, which was sort of clarinet, square wavy. Solo, which is sort of sax voice-like. I find that playing traditional Irish music, even with cuts and all that on synthesizers, sounds like crap. But not that the instrument sounds bad, but it just sounds weird to me to play. That's a brass, which is brassy. Pad, which is string-like. Lead, which is kind of like Emerson, Lake and Palmer thing. So a lot of the same, some of the same things come over from Celtic Sounds. You have the attack time, the release time, the channel number, that sort of thing. But then there's a lot of parameters you can set here. So like, for example, on this air one, you could add some breath noise. And each of these are stored independently. These are settings for each one are maintained. And once you change something, it saves it locally. So if I quit, so if I were to, like here, I'm going to set the texture to, 1, and then I'm going to open up a new tab. I'm going to close. So WARBL Sound Lab's gone. I bring it back, and you'll see that it comes right back to where it was. It keeps track of the last set of settings, always. So you have the ability to add texture. Oh, I have to reconnect because I relaunched it. So you have a whole bunch of things you can play with here. Some of these are really nice, like on the, you can change. Subtle, but you can mess with it. So you have a little bit of control over the tone, the brightness. You want to do portamento, that's where it slides. You can turn that on and off, set the time. So you have control over portamento. Same idea with the reverbs. You have the reverb.
My favorite, the portamento.
Yeah. Yeah, each one has a bit of, you have vibrato. That you can control for each one. I'm going to just reset that one. You can always reset any preset to the default settings. So yeah, you can just play with this stuff. It has the same transpose. Should have the same transpose somewhere here. Where's my transpose? Tell me there's a transpose in this tool. Pitch, bend, portamento, blah, 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 bend up, bend down. What the heck? Did I not put transpose in here? Well, I need to add transpose. I thought I had transpose in here. Did I miss that? Pitch and range, and scale.
I don't know. What's pre-delay? Is that like a wet-dry mix?
No, the wet dry mix is wet dry right here. Pre-delay is how long before it actually starts to apply the reverb. So it's just a delay. I don't play around with the pre-delay. I think it's it just waits. I think what it does is it passes the original through and then it waits a certain amount of time before it then starts to gate that into the reverb. So you can just play around with that. I'm just kind of surprised I don't have a transpose in this tool. I'm going to have to add that this afternoon. How did I miss that? Because that's so weird. Anyway, yeah, so what else can I tell you about this? Again, same thing here, import and export of all the settings. These are the full set of settings for all of the instruments if you want to have settings in you, and then you can exchange them with other people. Same thing here with the help is there, and the same thing with the full screen view is there. So you can work with it full screen if you like. Okay, I gotta write that down. I gotta add transpose. That was just ridiculous. How did I miss that? It's really funny. I could have sworn it was there. I'll stick it, or where will I stick it? I'll probably stick it right there. Anyway, yeah, I'll do that right after this. And what else about this? Oh yeah, you can always go to the WARBL control panel there. It takes you actually to the configuration tool. WARBL Sound Lab is one that it is more affected by the throttling because of the way that it's able to respond to very, very dense control streams, and because it's doing the synthesis of the sounds, it's using a lot more CPU than the Celtic Sounds, which is just loading a file and modifying the sound that's there rather than actually creating the waveform on the fly. So, so this one is one that's probably best left up front. It will run in the back, but it changes the way that it responds to the bends and all that. I put in when I first released this, there were some problems with pops and clicks because how can I describe this? When you're doing all this bendy stuff on the WARBL, and particularly I'm going to show you, like, I'm going to load a different, like this guy. This is a setting that Jesse put together. The way he uses it differently than I do. He does it like this. He uses, let's see. Oh, I need to set the expression here to that. Okay. So he has it set up with like a 1 octave range of bends. But it's also responding to the voice, to the breath pressure. The problem is when you're using the breath pressure to change the volume, then the whole system for doing octave shifts using breath pressure kind of goes out the window. So in Jesse's system, to get the second octave, you have to lift your thumb off the back. Right? I'm not used to playing it that way. This is what Jesse set up. This is what he wanted to use it. But you can see how much information is flowing in that MIDI log, like up here. So if I go back to my normal configuration, this one, and I'm going to just set my normal. If you just look over here in the log, I'll clear the log. You'll see you get like notes and bends. Oh, I'm in the wrong configuration. Right. I'm connected. Okay. Oh, and I'm in the wrong. Oh, because I'm responding here. Sorry. There we go. There we go. Let me clear this.
Would it help to
Sorry.
Would it help to use USB instead of Bluetooth when you like?
The latency is not that big a deal. No, it would not. It would not. The problem isn't the transmitting the data. That's not the problem. The problem is that um, every single time the tool receives one of those messages, it has to do something to change the sound. And you can see that those bends, for example, come in at a really fast rate. They're coming in like every 13 milliseconds, so like 10 milliseconds between. That's for every single one of those things. That's going to change the sound. And it happens in bursts. So like there's nothing, and then there's a bunch of them, and then there's nothing, and a bunch of them. And what was happening is that using these really, when you have the WARBL set up to put out all of the data that it can, and it can put out like even Jesse said, he goes, compared to any other controller on the market, this thing throws out enormous amounts of control data, which is a good thing because it does allow for a lot of expressiveness, but it's a bad thing on the receiving end because you have to be able to handle just like, hundreds or thousands of messages a second.
And the
And so,
Bluetooth doesn't use any more CPU than USB connection.
no, not really. That's not the bottleneck. That's really not the bottleneck. The bottleneck is the bursty behavior of the control data. And so originally, what happened is that occasionally, if you had really bursty data, we would get a pop in the sound. And so to fix that, I switched to a system where essentially there are fixed time slots for the playback processing of a 60th of a second, and everything kind of gets scheduled into one of those slots rather than just what normally happens, and this is what happens in Celtic Sounds, is that as soon as the data hits the program, it responds to it. And because that program is relatively CPU, not as CPU intensive as Sound Lab, it's able to keep up with it. And so I didn't have to put in some kind of a system to deal with the dense control streams. But Sound Lab is CPU intensive by comparison, and we did run into this problem with the pops and clicks. So I put in a system that fixed that by kind of smoothing out having it respond in a regular way and smoothing out the bursts so that you still get the same result, but it doesn't have to do the CPU performance is much more smooth. Anyway, the bottom line is that we fixed the pop problem, but the way that you fix the pop problem is by setting up this scheduling system for handling the control data. And when I was talking earlier about how browsers throttle things when we go to the back tab, is the thing that does that scheduling, which is a particular JavaScript call called request animation frame, gets turned off when your tab is not the active frame. They actually stop processing animation frame because animation frame was originally used for like games and stuff, and they figure, well, if you can't see it, then we don't need to draw it. But a lot of other things, particularly audio tools, use the same system. So, and this was brought up to me by Jesse. He said, I noticed that when WARBL Sound Lab when the tab goes deactive, that it stops responding to the control information. The note on and off information doesn't work with that system. It always responds. It's not, because it's not dense. Your note's only a few notes per second, but your control data is thousands per second. So what he noticed is, like, when it was in the back tab, he would play and it would play the notes, but all of his control stuff he was doing nothing. So I came up with a solution where basically when the tab is hidden, it turns off the scheduler and it just starts processing all of the control data like it was note data, which means there is a possibility that on the back tab that we could still have pops and clicks on the back tab. But from what I hear, it's not happening, which is good news. It means that maybe maybe the scheduler, which was extremely defensive, again, because I'm running on a pretty high-end Mac. People could be running it on slower systems. I wanted something that would work and, had a high chance of success. Certainly when it's up front, when you see it, as long as you can see it, it's going to be processing those messages correctly. It's going to be working with the system I intended to smooth out the bursts. But if if you ever have any problems, there is one more option, which is this enable lower CPU mode. Enable lower CPU use mode. And what this does is it simplifies the sound generation in a way that reduces the CPU down by probably a third to half, but without changing the sound quality too much. So let me just make sure that I'm kind of configured right here as far as, okay, so I'm back in the whistle. I've got note velocity, 2 semitones. Okay. Where you'll notice it more is on these guys, like you can hear there's like one more oscillator there. Like here's the normal, like actually probably hear it more on solo. Not so bad there. Let's see on this one. It's a little bit less rich. It's basically that I'm using I'm mixing two waveforms together instead of three. Same thing with lead. It's like 3. So there's just an extra tone there. That simplifies the mix, the sound generation. And again, it's just a fail-safe. You know, most of the time you can just leave it turned off. But you know, there may be if someone's in a situation where like it's popping and clicking all over the place, that might be a way to you know, if they just don't have enough CPU. Now, if you've got 90 tabs running and you're running a bunch of other software on your system, I mean, it may impact this. You know, I can't create I can't create CPU cycles out of nothing. So you know, this would be probably true for any tool, but in particular with the web stuff, this is pretty kind of bleeding edge in terms of what I'm pushing this thing to do. So I would again suggest just put it up front. You know, if you're doing something critical, if you're using it to record or something, quit everything else. Put up like one window. Put, you know, like if you have a whole bunch of tabs, I would say put it, you know, take it out, put it in its own window, and you know, close the rest of your tabs. Would be probably my recommendation. Is just let it run in its own Chrome window. Let's see, I want to show you one thing that is going to come out here in a couple of hours, which is I added a SAC pipa.
So would you say this is usable on stage?
Oh, no, because if I say yes, then I expose myself to liability. I don't know. I came out with this thing 4 days ago, so I'm gonna have to wait for other people to tell me. I mean, there's no reason it wouldn't be. It does require Celtic Sounds does require internet connectivity because it pulls the samples from. Yeah, so you have to have, it has to be connected. This one has to be connected to the internet to work. If it's not, it will scream at you when you try to load the instruments. It'll say it wasn't able to load the samples. It'll actually put up a dialogue and tell you that it wasn't able to load the samples. I wanted to show you this though. This is kind of fun. So I just literally I'm going to push this probably in another few, probably after this event. This is just a version of it that because one of the other instruments, and I debated about whether to do this or not, because technically this is not a Celtic instrument, but, so, oh, sorry, I've got 2 running here. You can, by the way, you can run multiple copies of this at the same time. So, so let me show you that first, and then I'll show you the new thing. So, like I got 2 copies of Celtic Sounds here. This one's going to be tin whistle. And this one's going to be flute, and I can play them together. That's interesting. They're not in tune with each other. Oh, because they have different bends. That's funny. I have to figure out what's going on there. That's like, why is one of those playing in different tuning? If I have 2 whistles, are they the same? Yeah, there could be actually differences in the samples. So you can run multiple of these at the same time. You could have Celtic Sounds and Sound Lab running all at the same time. If you want, do crazy stuff like that. But I did want to show you there's a new instrument here, and so I've got the same ones, but you can see there's a new one, sack pipa. Sack pipa is a Swedish bagpipe, and I've always liked the sound of the sac pipa, so I'm going to switch this over to the so I've got the uilleann pipes, right, with the drone, and then the island pipes in the drone, and small pipes, which I think sound really cool. But I don't know if you want it. And by the way, if you want small pipes in A, you just transpose them up. My small pipes by default are in D. But I added a sac pipa, and you're the first people to hear this. Sac pipa again is the Swedish bagpipe. It's got a really cool sound. So that's going to be, got to balance the volume. The volume's a little bit high. But yeah, that's going to be coming out in a few hours just as a new instrument. And that'll be kind of cool because I know a lot of sac pipa people would love to have something like that. And it's just a cool sound. So going to be adding that soon. And yeah, I probably will stick a transpose slider in here. How weird that it doesn't
Plans for a string instrument?
No, I'm not going to do any string instruments. I did put a string instrument originally in Celtic Sounds. I was using my fiddle, and it just sounded really weird, to be honest, to play a string instrument like a fiddle with a wind controller. I tried it. I did not like the results, so I decided not to do it.
Banjo?
Boron? Yeah, no, I tried, I mean, I could have the banjo and the mandolin and all that, but it just, playing those instruments with a wind controller just isn't something I want to promote. So yeah, that's just me, putting my preferences out there. But anyway, yeah, so right now the sac pipa is really the only thing I'm going to be adding to Celtic Sounds here just shortly. And hopefully a transpose slider here. Weird. Anyway, any other questions about any of this stuff? I don't have any plans to do any other modules. I don't have the only thing I thought of that would be kind of fun, but it would be much more complicated, and I think this is already complicated enough, is that to write an editor that allows you to build these instruments from scratch, these WARBL Sound Lab instruments, which have kind of a synthesizer model. They have oscillators and filters and gates and choruses, and I mean, they're just you can kind of imagine an old ARP synthesizer with a whole bunch of sliders and getting all those the little slider controls and dials. I could build something that kind of looks like an old Moog synthesizer, and you could dial up a sound and then add it as a preset here. Maybe in the future. At this point, I'm trying to create something that normal people who aren't necessarily steeped in MIDI and synthesizer technology can just go to a website, turn on their WARBL, and have some fun. And the thing I'm interested in is stuff like what Alex is doing. This is just a web page. I mean, this could be a YouTube. This could be a radio program. I mean, it's just playing sound. And the question I've gotten from some people is, how do I hook this? People are more sophisticated. How do I hook this into Ableton Live? How do I hook this into Logic Pro? That sort of thing. And the answer is, I have absolutely no idea, because that's not typically. That's not, and they're talking about how to go directly from this into those as a plugin, because typically those systems have virtual synthesizer plugins that plug in, and they're written in native tools. They're not web-based tools. Probably the simplest way to do this is in the analog domain, which is that you take the output of your computer and you run it into a mixing board, and then you run it back into your computer, into whatever audio interface you use in your computer. That is how I would do it. I would plug it. I have my computer feeds this mixing board. My mixing board then feeds audio interface that goes back to the computer for recording. So probably my recommendation would be to just do it all using wires, and treat it like it was just any other sound coming in from your mixing board. But again, I don't see doing any work that would like directly expose this as a plug-in for other synth tools. Partially because I have absolutely no freaking idea how to do that, and I don't have any of that. I don't own any of those packages, so I can't actually test any of that stuff, right? So, but that being said, this is all open source. All of the source code for all of this is sitting on my GitHub repository. So anybody who wants to take this and run with it or use the sort of the guts of what I've done as a framework to build other tools like this, they're welcome to go grab the source code. The only thing that's not on the GitHub site are the actual samples that I use for Celtic Sounds, because those are like my bread and butter. those those are the keys to the kingdom, and so I don't give those away. So they're actually not in the GitHub site, but everything else is the actual source code for the application. All of that stuff is the images and all that are there. And this thing, because Sound Lab doesn't use samples, there's no proprietary samples or anything in this thing. People can just download the source code and run with it if they want. And it'll even run, this one will actually run locally. You don't even have to run it off the web. If you download the source code, you can double click the WARBL Sound Lab.html file and it'll just launch in your browser without even going to the internet. So this one theoretically could be used on stage without any internet connectivity at all, because of the way it doesn't actually have to go to the internet for anything except to run the first time. It doesn't store. It's not like ABC transcription tools. It's not designed to be run offline. ABC transcription tools is designed specifically to work offline. It was very complicated to do that. These are not. These are designed to be used welcome to the internet primarily. Is the kind of the use case. Any other questions before I go and fix my missing transpose slider and add the SAC people and get that out there? No, great. Well, thanks all. I appreciate you all showing up. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm still trying to get mine connected.
You're still trying to get yours connected?
Yeah, without that horrible sound. And what I have done is I've managed to connect it to my phone, right? And it's playing beautifully on my phone. It's actually really nice. And I'm wondering, can I connect my phone to my Bluetooth to my sound system?
But you weren't able to plug it into your hub?
As soon as I plugged it into my hub, I got that horrible sound again. Like it's just not working. I tried the hub. I've tried a few different configurations.
So there's something. Oh, so you've got some kind of a ground loop issue. There's something. It could be that was it doing this before you switched over to OBS?
I don't know. I haven't actually used OBS yet. I downloaded it, and as soon as I downloaded it, my whole system went kind of wonky. So I'm not sure I want to use it.
Okay, so this is just happening. Now, do you hear that noise? Again, this has nothing to do with the software. We're just talking about, this is just WARBL hardware issues.
I'm going to have to run,
Okay.
Michael. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here just for.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No,
It's
it's
okay.
fine.
I'm there's something I figured out that it actually sounds really good on my phone. That's kind of a nice way for me to practice with it.